Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this week's Polsky Center workshop on digital selling for startups. We are very lucky to have Jeff Davis with us facilitating today's workshop. He is the award-winning author of Create Togetherness and an international keynote speaker on B2B revenue acceleration. He's had the opportunity to work in several different roles across sales and marketing throughout his professional career of over 15 years. With rich experiences that range from large global organizations to early stage startups, Jeff takes a unique approach to revenue acceleration that focuses on fusing both sales and marketing to create the best platform to engage the modern buyer. He's also a Booth grad, so we are excited to have an alum with us today. During the presentation, if you have any questions for Jeff, feel free to just put those in the chat and we will get to those at the end of the presentation. But with that, Jeff, I will hand it over to you.
You're on mute.
I think you need to unmute, Jeff.
I did, and you told me to do that, but of course I did not, and I kept talking anyway. So let's go back. Good evening, everybody. My name is Jeff Davis. Thank you for the very kind introduction. That's what not to do during a video selling presentation to your clients. Always unmute. Either way, we're going to talk about one of my favorite topics, digital selling for startups, even though I didn't start off on the best foot. We're going to keep going. I'm really excited for this presentation because one of the things that I'm really passionate about is helping people, helping companies, helping startups think through this whole shift that we've had to do. You know, it's been happening for a while, but COVID has made it much more salient for folks. So throughout this presentation, I hope you'll be able to get a good sense of how digital selling, or what I like to call digital first selling, is different than traditional selling, and then give you some strategies and tactics that you can use to actually change the way that you're doing business and be more successful with your startup. Again, I want to make this as interactive as possible. I've left time at the end of the presentation, so if you have questions throughout, I encourage you to put those in the chat and we'll make time for them, even if I have to shorten the content to get to your questions, because I feel like that's the most important. So a little bit about me, just so you know, I call this the why should you listen to this guy talking to you slide, which basically tells you some of the things that I've done. I've worked over 15 years, coming up on 20, across sales, marketing, and business development. As the intro said, I've done everything from Fortune 500 companies all the way down to early stage startups. I've been employee number one at an early stage startup. So I am very familiar with what this feels like in getting traction, product market fit, all that kind of stuff. I mainly focus on B2B. So those folks in the B2C, the folks on the call that are B2C, I'll also try to make sure that I'm giving you relevant examples, and a lot of things crosses both B2B and B2C. And then I've had the pleasure for speaking with some major organizations like Salesforce, LinkedIn, Oracle, HubSpot, and some others. So I'm really passionate about this topic, and I really love helping folks that are running startups sell better as well as market better. So let's jump into it. Here are the topics we're going to go through tonight. We're going to talk about the definition of what I call digital first selling. Beyond digital selling, I think that we have shifted to what I call digital first selling because almost everybody now is forced to start with digital. And if you're selling in a way that doesn't capture that and doesn't understand that, you're putting yourself at a disadvantage. We'll go into some of the key steps of really shifting to this digital first mindset. And we won't be able to get to everything because of the short time frame that we have tonight. But four of the key things I want to talk about are understanding the digital first buyer, so that you understand their mindset and how you can connect with them. Identifying your ideal customer, which I think for startups is especially important. Many times with startups, you jump over really understanding who your customer is, and it is detrimental because you waste a lot of time trying to figure out where there's a fit, right? Establishing a cohesive digital presence, and then we'll close out with developing a digital engagement strategy. We'll also go through a couple things that I think that you should put into your toolkit, which I look at like the basic of tools that you need to really get started in case you don't have those. There's many, many more, but I want to let you know kind of what you need to be dangerous, so to say. And then, you know, as we said before, we'll open it up for Q&A, and I want to make that the majority of the conversation so you get your questions answered. I'll pause there. Any major questions before we get started?
Real quick, the presentation be available to us, the recording or the slide deck?
I will make that available, but let me make sure that I'm Polsky. What's your stance on that?
Yes, I will send the recording afterwards.
There we go. That was a good question too.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. So let's talk about the definition of what digital first selling is so we're all on the same page. It's a process that leverages digital tools, content, and channels to identify, target, and seamlessly engage buyers throughout the entire buying journey. This approach leads to higher engagement and acceleration of speech revenue. I hate reading slides, but I wanted to specifically read this one so that you knew what I was talking about and we're all on the same page. The reason for digital first selling is that everybody now is starting with digital first. And if you are not, you're missing the mark. All customers, because we've been forced into this platform where everything starts with digital, that's where they're starting. If you're not there, then you're missing the mark. Couple things to talk about the difference between traditional selling versus digital first selling. Let's go through a couple of these so we can kind of ground ourselves on what does that look like. So when we look at prospecting, traditional selling would be you get a lead list, you're cold calling, you might be going to networking events, which of course we can't really do now anyway, and then door-to-door sales. That's the traditional way of doing business. When you look at digital first selling, you're looking at more data-driven targeting. So we have a lot more tools now that allow us to say, I need people that look like this, find them, and then you can connect with them and they have a higher likelihood of being somebody you want to talk to. Also, you now have these kind of warm, what I call warm calling, where you've interacted with them potentially on social media, you might have sent them an email. So when you call them, they at least at some instance know who you are. You're not calling out of the blue. We're doing more virtual intros. It's easier for people to say like, hey, I know this guy that does this. Jeff Davis is in sales and marketing alignment. I'm going to send you an intro via LinkedIn. And then inbound leads. So you can do work around social that actually has people raise their hand and say, hey, I love your content. I want to talk more to you, more with you about your product. So all of these things have made selling a lot easier, but you can see the difference. And I listed some here around qualifying, product demos. Obviously, you know, we're doing more video selling. You have the ability to do more dynamic presentations. When you were in person, it was like product demo, like here's my product, here's my, you know, my clipboard. So you can, you know, add video, you do polling, you can do a whole bunch of stuff that you couldn't do before. And then last but not least, one that many people forget about is contracting. So getting the actual contract signed, but previously it might have been via email, you had to go to legal, you had to go to this person, it just took time. Now you can just send one email out to everybody signed, and or you need to make edits, make quick edits. So it makes that part of the sales process a lot easier. So just to ground us on where we are. So let's start talking about understanding the digital first buyer and how we think. This is not necessarily groundbreaking. Every time I talk about this, people are like, this aha moment, which I think is actually funny. Think about, first and foremost, how you buy today. Think about, you know, for instance, we were out on the deck the other day. We were, you know, putting the flowers up finally because the weather's better. And we just thought about the fact, we need something, we need this. And I did a little research. I actually texted a friend because they had a deck. And then honestly, within probably 30 minutes, I was on Amazon buying what I needed, right? And think about the fact that my journey started really with Google. It didn't start with me reaching out to Jeff Davis's gardening service or Jeff Davis's, like, that's ridiculous, right? Like no one does that. But so many times when you ask entrepreneurs, how are people finding you? Oh, we're networking, or, I'm like, well, but their journey starts on Google. So if you're not there, this is what I'm talking about, this idea of digital first selling, you're missing a market getting them in the beginning of that process. So that's what we're talking about. So all of this has really happened because digital has changed the way we interact. So I always like to show this one because a lot of folks have just not adapted. And when you're coming in, if you're new, if you're a startup and you're not used to selling, you may be doing things that are out of sync with the way that people buy today. One great example, one great metaphor to make this real is the car buying industry. We have these shifts in the way that we buy, and what you find is that companies that don't adjust don't survive. So, you know, back in the day, I'm probably aging myself a little bit. When you were 16, you got your permit. You went to the used car lot. You didn't know anything, right? You had Uncle Luke or Uncle Rob or whoever that told you like this is how you buy a car. But you essentially, the salesperson navigated that conversation. Enter Consumer Reports. All of a sudden, we have all this information. So there's a change in information flow. I no longer need you to be able to buy my car. Like I've got all the features and benefits here. So you've got to provide value in a different way. And so if I go to the used car lot and I talk to the salesperson, he's like, oh, the rims are this and the battery is this. I was like, dude, I read the report. Like, we got other things to talk about. So you have to make a shift. And then that third shift for the car buying industry was Carvana, where literally you can sit at home, have a few clicks, and order a car. So just be thinking in that way, that the information flow has changed for today's buyer. They know everything. Whether you put it out on the internet or not, they've done their research. So you've got to think about, how can you provide value in a different way? And that stereotypically is by educating them to help them more clearly understand the problem and how you can solve it. It's not coming in and talking about how awesome you are. I had one client and they were like, yeah, we're customer first and buyer first. And I went to their website and I go, your website is all about you. It says in 1952, we were the greatest thing since sliced bread and we're awesome and we have all these awards. And I go, at no point have you talked about your customer. So that's the mindset I want to make sure that you have. It is not about you. It's how you can service the customer so they will want to buy from you. So in addition to that, because of this whole digital era and all this influx of information, buying is actually more complicated because there's information everywhere and you don't know what to trust. You don't know what's real. You got people on YouTube saying this is great, but they have affiliate links. So if you want to separate yourself as a startup, if you come in and you help people make decisions, they will gravitate towards you and reward you with their business. The brands that are really making inroads and really being successful are the ones that are educating people about the problem. When you look at any of the consumer brands, it is not about the product. Take, for instance, Lululemon's a great one. It's a lifestyle. They're educating you about how to live better, live healthy. Look at their content. It's not about the clothes, right? They're talking about how what you're doing isn't working, or the equipment and the gear you're using isn't the best. Even a lot of the supplement brands, it's the same thing. So as you start to build this startup brand, start thinking about what problem do we serve and talk about that. And naturally what you'll do then, those people will understand that, look at you as authority, and then they'll buy your products, assuming that the product is good. That's not part of this presentation, but we're just going to assume your product is good. Some other reasons on the B2B side that the selling process become more complex are listed here. A lot of it deals with the fact that there are just more people in the buying decision process. So if you are B2B, keep in mind, there is no longer one decision maker. Most of these companies are being driven by consensus. So you have to talk to multiple stakeholders at the same time and get them all to agree that your solution works. And again, we didn't necessarily do a poll before this particular call, so I don't know how many people are B2B or B2C. But if you are B2B, keep in mind, you're going to have to talk to potentially the CEO, the CMO, the CIO. They all need and want different things. Do not, and I learned this the hard way, do not have the same pitch and presentation for each one of those different stakeholders. When you're talking to them, lead with what they care about. So look at your product and force rank of the things that we offer. Like, what is the most important to the CEO? It's probably about cutting costs. It's probably about maybe innovation. I don't know what that is. But then when you go talk to, potentially the end user, they want to know, does it work? Is it easy? Does it make my life easier? They don't care that it's saving the company, $2.5 million. So switch your language. And that's a part of your messaging. And I see a lot of startups that I work with, when I was mentoring at Polsky, it's the same message for everybody. And when you really start to push back and say, like, do you really think the chief marketing officer cares about that? They're like, oh yeah, you're right. So keep that in mind. Another thing to also think about is the traditional sales funnel has changed. I love this one. So this is why I put this in the graphic. I won't belabor it, but stereotypically we were pushing people through in a very linear manner. This goes back to the fact that we controlled all the information. So, back in the day when I started as a sales rep, I was out in the field, carrying the bag, so to say. If they needed an answer, they had to come to me. Oh, Jeff, we need you to follow up with this information. Oh, Jeff, do you know about this? So they were really almost dependent on me to get that information. That's out the door. So with the proliferation of information across platforms, you're seeing what's really on the right is that people can come and go as they please. They can enter their journey. You don't know where they are. So it's more important now that you really think through, and we're going to get to this later in the presentation, the entire buyer's journey, and have content and be ready to sell at any point, because somebody could come to you. This actually happened to me. They were like, oh, we heard you on a podcast like 9 months ago. I'm like, okay, great. Like, awesome. They're like, we saw you across some other channels. and we finally want to have a conversation with you about how we can leverage your services. So literally something I put out 9 months ago sparked a conversation that like literally came out of the blue. Like they reached out to me and I was like, I have no idea what this person was talking to me about. And then when we got to the conversation, they were like, oh, this podcast, and I knew what podcast it was, but it's things like that I had to mentally, okay, so they've already basically qualified themselves. They know that there's value there. I need to jump all the way to like, okay, well, let's make sure we're a match and then let's close the deal, right? If I didn't have that process mapped out, I would have been like, well, tell me more about your business. And why do you think that this is like, so I'm wasting time. Like they've told you we want to buy. Now we got to figure out and confirm that what you think is true, figure out what the right, right service level for you is, and then close the deal. So that's why we got to realize we have to be more agile and be more prepped because we don't know where people are coming at us. And last but not least, before we shift over to the next session, which is about identifying your ideal customer, I want you to know that you are selling change. You are not selling your product. You're not selling your services. You're not selling features and benefits. You are selling change. And I think this is, I made a whole slide because I think this is really important. The sellers that I know that are good at what they do recognize that you are trying to convince someone to part with their money and to change what they've been doing. And that is not easy. And actually it's getting harder. So go into a conversation, not trying to sell somebody, but really think about moving them to a different mindset and closer to buying your product. Understand where they are and where you need to get them and focus on that transition and that shift. And it will serve you much better. It will also stress you out less, trust me, because and this is, well, I probably should say this, but I'm saying anyway. I love when I talk to startup, founders or startup sales VPs, and they're like, I can't believe I didn't close them on the first sale. Who does that? Like really, dude? Like, relax. I'm like, oh, I'm so pissed. Like, this is ridiculous. Like, I'm a terrible seller. Like, people don't buy like that. So it's a conversation. You got to shift people into it. So, if you can close in the first phone call, great, awesome, whatever. You don't need to be on the call. But like majority of calls are not going to go like that. So, give yourself some grace, relax, but realize this is a continuum and you're trying to shift people to change their behavior and change the way that they're doing things. How are we doing on questions? Are we really crazy? Like, where are we at? Okay.
Questions so far yet, Jeff?
Okay, perfect, awesome. So let's shift to identifying your ideal customer. Okay, so I know it's the digital selling course, but I need you to understand this because every company I've worked with, you either don't do it or you kind of half-ass do it. And here's why this is so important. You have limited funds, you have limited time, you have limited resources. I have been employee number one at a startup and literally was running marketing and selling along with the CEO, not sleeping, right? I know what you're going through. Trust me, I've been there. What was my saving grace was understanding and being super crystal clear about who we felt had the highest likelihood of becoming a customer. You have to be a little bit bipolar with that and being flexible to understand that you may not be 100% right. And as you learn more information, you can shift, but your product is not for everybody. Your product is not for everybody. I can count on my fingers and toes, and probably yours as well, of how many founders have told me, or when I ask, who's your ideal customer? Oh, our product is for everybody. Oh, really? Not true. Not true. I mean, it's just not true. So let's go through some things that'll help you, some frameworks. And I've put some templates on here to help you think through who your ideal customer are. So there's two things as a startup you really, really need to do. Now, I've put the really bare, basic, simple way to approach this. You don't need to make this elaborate and do what like marketers at Fortune 500 companies do, but you do need to do some simple kind of templates for yourself so you understand who you need to talk to. So first and foremost is your ideal customer profile, also known as an ICP. If you do not have this, you need to get this tomorrow. So a couple of things that it helps you do. It helps you understand the type of account. So on the B2B side, it helps you understand the type of accounts you should go after. On the B2C side, it basically helps you understand who you should be going after. So on the B2C side, your ideal customer profile and customer persona are basically the same thing, right? So just to make that delineation. On the B2B side, they are different. The ideal customer profile is the type of account or company that you want to attract, or you think that's easiest to do business with. And then the customer persona is the people or persons within that account that you need to influence to get the contract. So those are the difference between B2B and B2C. And hopefully I wasn't doing acronym soup. B2B is business to business. B2C is business to consumer. So think Lululemon, think Athletic Greens. You can tell there's a theme here, what I've been seeing on my Instagram, but those are B2C products. So, okay, ideal customer profile. So you want to look at the type of customers that provide you the highest ROI and are the easiest to close. This is not necessarily about size, but as a startup, you need quick traction. You cannot be going for big whale accounts in the beginning. You need who am I going to tell what we do? And they say, yep, got it, awesome, want to buy it. That stereotypically is your ICP. You're going to, over time, it's going to increase the value of your customers. And as you do this, and what I call a living document, as you see things that are not working or you find out something different, just update this, but continue to work on this document because it'll keep you focused. And let me tell you why, especially back when we were doing, networking in person, you go to a networking event and you want to talk to everybody. So what I learned to do was there was when we got, I totally aged myself. When we got business cards back in the day, you'd have two piles. You would have the ICP pile. So these are people I need to call tomorrow. And then you'd have the other pile, which is there's people that have interest, might be a fit, but they're not a priority. Do the same thing as you connect with people. Prioritize the people that fit your ICP first, and then the other ones you get to, right? And this really will help you build a target list faster because, there are so many companies and so many people that you can talk to, but I'm telling you, the people that hone in and laser in on the people that get it will get traction faster. On the customer persona side for the B2B folks, you also want to look at who are the key influencers that you need to connect with within that account and what's important to them. So this goes back to what we talked about changing your messaging. You want to say, okay, great. Who are the 2 to 3 people that I need to talk to close this deal? It will most likely be more than one person. It's usually, this decision-making groups now are up to 10 people on the B2B side, but you hone on the 2 or 3 that you need to get into the door and really learn who they are. One great example is if you're, I was talking to a client about this, if you're calling up people that might be in the shop, they're in charge of the laborers, they may not be behind their desk all day. So continuing to follow up via email might not be the best strategy because that's not how they get communication, right? So figure out we need to call them instead of sending an email. So think through those things, but you're more than welcome to take these templates. They're very simple to use, very, very easy, and elaborate as you see fit. So here are a couple steps that you can go through to develop these ICPs or ideal customer profiles. On the B2C side, it would be customer personas. So identify the traits of your ideal customers. So think, what industry do they serve? Geographically, where are they? How big? Are we talking about small companies, big companies? How much money do they need to have to afford us? Especially on B2C, if you have a premium product and I make $25,000 a year, I'm probably not going to buy your stuff. So I'm not your best target, right? So think about that, right? If you're selling $7.50 coffee, a person in the suburbs with 7 kids is probably not buying your coffee. So think about that. Describe customers that are already using your product or competitors. One thing that I also see startups sometimes lack on is if you have a similar competitor in the market, go find out who's buying that and figure out not so much what they're doing. We're going to get to that, but find out who is buying the product. Find out about them. Why are they buying the product? All that stuff. And then mirror that as you do your outreach. Talk to ideal customers. One thing that we're using, I have a client now, we're in beta mode right now. And one of the ways that we've gotten beta customers is by pitching them with a product demo and saying, hey, you're expert in your field. We think you have great insights. We'd love to just do a product demo, product feedback session. That's what we call it. It's a product demo, but it's called a product feedback session where we share the product with them. We tell them why we think somebody like them might like it, and we ask for their feedback. And we shut up. We don't pitch, we don't sell. We just ask for feedback. Would you use this? Would you not use this? What would you change? What do you like? And then that naturally turns into a conversation where we say, well, assuming it goes good, would you be interested in being a beta customer? And usually that's a yes, or like, I'd like to continue the conversation when I see this. So that's something that you can do too that's worked very well for us. And then synthesize all those common traits into an easy to use template, which I provided you on the last page. And then just go. Tape it to your desk, tape it to your head, tape it wherever, tape it somewhere. And then as you start to find opportunities, because your knee-jerk reaction, right? And I've been there, and I still have to correct myself, is you want to talk to everybody. And I'm not saying don't talk to them. It's just prioritize people that have a higher likelihood of giving you money. All right? Make sense? I'm going to take silence is golden. All right, which is the beauty of Zoom. So let's transition to establishing a cohesive digital presence. So this is where we get into kind of understanding where we bring in social selling. You have to make sure that your digital presence is cohesive and is well thought out, because again, it goes back to the way that we interact with you, right? Everything starts on Google. I think the number is up to 70–80% of customers go to your social and your website first before even reaching out to you. So you have to think about, you don't really have a physical storefront. Even if you do have a physical storefront, people are finding you on digital first. And if they're confused about who you are, if it's disjunct and all over the place, they're just not going to buy from you, right? So let's talk about social selling when we talk about our online presence, because I think this is really important, and it's becoming more and more important now that we're going through this whole digital acceleration. So social selling is a subset of digital selling. A lot of people use them interchangeably, but they are not. So digital selling it's a methodology that leverages all the digital assets and all the digital things that you can do. So digital documentation, video selling, CRM, all of those are digital selling. Social selling, which is really important, is a subset of digital selling. It really is the art of using social media. And I really like this definition: to find, connect with, understand, and nurture sales prospects. That is not my definition. I stole it, but it was so good that I was like, I don't need to change it because it's perfect. This is what social selling is. Now, the biggest thing I find that entrepreneurs and startup folks don't understand is social selling is not being on social media. They are not the same thing. You actually have to actively engage on social media and have a strategy for you getting people into your sales funnel. This is what I hear. Oh, we're on Facebook. Oh, we're on Twitter. We're on Instagram. We're just doing it. And the first question I ask is why? Well, everybody's on Facebook, but are your customers there? And where are you pushing them? Like, where are they going after Facebook? And then I get the blank stare. So you have to have structure to your social presence. It's not about just having a Twitter account and reposting things, right? So I want you to get into the mindset of this is a methodology that you're using as a part of your selling strategy, and it is sales. It is not being on social media. So this goes back to what I said earlier. 78% of people are researching your company online before they visit you, whether you're brick and mortar, whether you're online. People are not going to your branded website or branded content stereotypically first. They are going to find you in other third-party media, whether it be via search, whether it be a blog post. So think about that. It's not just about what you put on your website, on your social media, but it's also how you show up in other mediums. So think about the example like this. So this is the way I shop. So not only am I a booth grad, but I'm also an engineer. So you can just tell I'm an engineer. I research everything to like nauseum. And so I am really heavy into consumer reports and rankings. And so before I even find your brand or find out about you, I'm doing research on third-party sites. So if you're not there, you are missing me in the beginning of the stage to be even considered in my short list. And then stereotypically, if you're not on the short list, I don't buy. So keep that in mind, because that's a lot of the way people think. So let's get into social media. There are so many platforms out there for you to leverage. First and foremost, I suggest to clients to maintain about 2 to 3 social media accounts, because I feel that is what you can realistically maintain as an entrepreneur, as a startup. When you get to be more than 3, you either need to hire an agency or you just basically turn out to be mediocre at all of them, right? Nobody humanly possible, well, I don't want to say with nobody, but most people humanly possible don't have time to manage, really thoroughly manage more than 3 social media accounts. So I say pick 2 to 3, 1 to 2 is great, but find out where your people are. And so this is why I started our conversation with, understanding the ICP and the customer persona, because it leads into where are you going to be on social media. So the case in point I use is like, if your target audience is 85-year-old grandmothers in Miami that, are hanging out with their senior friends, they're probably not going to be on LinkedIn. So you can have the best LinkedIn profile and, share amazing content, but your people aren't there. It's the same thing for Facebook. Like, Facebook, it's getting better, but if you're a B2B product, Facebook may not be the best place for you to be at. So first of all, find out where your people are, where they're hanging out. It could be one of these. There's several more, but this is a graphic I like. And then from there, learn the uniqueness of that platform. The way that I interact and engage on Instagram, and many of you hopefully know this, it's not the same way I show up in LinkedIn. And the way to optimize my presence on those sites are different. So not only do I encourage you to first and foremost understand who your people are. So we have our ICP, we have our customer persona, find out where they hang out, which platforms they are. And you can find things like this wherever you can do research and get demographics and all that kind of stuff. And then once you do that, find out how to optimize your presence on that platform. Does video work better? Does short text work better? Does long form, whatever that is, find that out, because it's really crucial for you to do social media correctly. So here's some overall social selling tips that I want to share with you, so you can get an idea of like how to approach this and do it in a really effective way. So first and foremost, going back to this whole taking a structured, methodical approach to social selling. This is not being on social media. Set goals, and you can use the SMART framework, but set goals. Say, I want to have X amount of connections by whatever, or I want to increase my engagement by whatever, but have an idea of what you're trying to achieve. And that's based on where you are in the life cycle of your business. If you're launching and you're focused on brand awareness, it may be pure, reach. It may be pure follows. We don't know what that is. If you're having a hard time, you have a pretty, decent sized community and it's converting, then you want to like look at conversions to website, but be thoughtful about why you're on social media and what you're trying to achieve. Be human. This is more important. And actually, this rose to the top for a reason, because it consistently is being talked about, is because we've become so digitally focused, is that people really are craving intimacy. They want to know you. They want to be talked to as humans. So really bring out your personality. Talk about who you are. I coach all the CEOs that I've worked for startups and other small companies, many of which have felt very uncomfortable being vulnerable and sharing their story. You got to get out there and connect with people. People want connection with people. They want to feel that brands understand them. So, if you're the CEO, get on social media, talk about why you started the business. Those stories resonate with people. We talked about this earlier, but focus on moving people, not closing. So worst social media tactics. Hey, I just created this thing and it's awesome. And buy it today. Call me at, 312-555-5555, buy some stuff. No, that's not going to work. Focus on that, educating and nurturing people, connecting with them, answering questions. All that stuff, it shifts people to buying your product, because no one wants to be, what they say, ABC, always be closing like that. It just doesn't work anymore. So I probably killed that. So just let it be what it is. Focus on developing relationships, also building community. Be really thoughtful about, offering things potentially to folks that sign up for your blog or webinar. Create a community of people that are like-minded, that want and are interested in your service. Share valuable content consistently to build credibility and brand. The one thing that I have found is that consistency wins over perfection. I'll say it again. Consistency wins over perfection. If you're going to do woke Wednesdays, then you need to be there every Wednesday. And let me tell you, I have experienced it where I was doing a series I missed a day. People like, Jeff Davis, what's going on? Where are you at? People notice. So if you're going to start something, be consistent at it, because you'll start to have people crave to be interacting with you. And that, I'm telling you, it wins over glossy, amazing video that looks like it's produced by a Hollywood set. People just want to know that they consistently can rely on you. Plan out your calendar. I plan on a monthly basis at minimum. Plan out what you're going to say. You'll see my posts. I post a minimum of 3 days a week on LinkedIn. That is all preset. I've thought about what I want to talk about for the month, for the week, and then and we'll get into the tools you can use to do that. But have those preset, and then obviously you can switch and change. But here's the thing: we're trying to create this so that it can run itself, and you can focus on running the business. I'm all about, like, how can we automate things, keep them authentic, but like, you got a lot on your plate, and you can't be on Facebook for 12 hours a day, because guess what? You got other stuff to do. And if you don't have other things to do, that should be concerning. Optimize and sync presence. We talked about that. You just want to show up the same way across all of your social media. So if I go to Facebook and you're talking about, you're selling earrings, but then I go to Instagram and you're selling boots, I'm a little confused. Is it boots? Is it earrings? I mean, what are you doing? And trust me, I've seen this. So just make sure you show up the same way. If it's your picture, make sure it's the same picture. If it's whatever that is, I want to be able to go to any of your social media sites and be able to know that I'm talking to you, because that's going to help you to be able to have multi-channel conversations. Because you may talk to somebody, and this happened to me, talk to somebody on LinkedIn, then you see them on Instagram, and you either continue the conversation or have another conversation. And it's all because Jeff Davis is consistent across all of his social media. So you have to do the same. Listen to target customer conversations. Listen to what people are saying. Use that to your advantage. People may be complaining about XYZ. If that's something that you can offer, pipe in, be like, actually, we're working on that, or whatever that is. And then one pro tip, if you're looking to increase visibility and engagement, especially, this works across all social media, but especially on LinkedIn, where I have used it successfully, is just adding my comments to people's posts and saying, like, from my perspective, XYZ. And it's a pretty easy lift. So hopefully those are some helpful social selling tips. In light of the time, I'm going to keep it moving, but I'm more than happy to answer any questions as we get to the end about social selling. So here's an example of a calendar that you can use. Again, I typically try to pick a theme for the month and then pick out sub themes for each week. And then that will help you avoid being like, oh my God, what am I going to talk about today? What am I going to post? When you do that work up front, you can, again, plan it out so that it's already set and gone. You can worry about the business, or at least, okay, this week I'm going to talk about how shea butter is the better moisturizer than, I don't know, whatever you want to do. Then, when you get to Friday and your brain is fried, you're like, oh, this week we're talking about shea butter, and maybe it's you're sharing an article or something, right? This has kept me sane. And I'm telling you, it is worth doing the work up front so that you, at any point of the week, can know exactly what you're supposed to talk about, and you don't have to think about it. All right. And we'll get into some tools. One of the tools that we'll get into that later, because I want to make sure that we get through to your questions. Here are some of the social selling tools. I won't go through this ad nauseum, but this will be in the deck. These are some of the ones that I use, some of the ones that I like the most. There are others, but I think a lot of these either offer free or low cost options. So I think that they're really relevant for startups. So you're more than welcome to take this list and look at it and incorporate this into what you're doing. All right, fourth topic. Developing a digital engagement strategy. It sounds really fancy, but what it is just how are you going to actually sell, developing a process. So the one thing that sales is about process. Anytime I'm working with a startup and they don't have a sales process, you are not selling. You are having conversations. Selling is a discipline. Selling is a process. And if you are just off a whim, like, oh, I just have conversations with people, and then they say they like my stuff, great. That'll get you some sales, potentially, especially with people that know you and like you, but you can't scale that. And if you're really trying to scale your startup, you've got to build a process. So we're going to go across two things. We're going to talk about the buyer's journey, and then we're also going to talk about developing a sales cadence really quick. We'll wrap things up in the next probably 5 to 10 minutes, and then I want to open the floor to make sure that we get your questions answered. So hopefully that works for everybody. Okay, so mapping the buyer's journey. This is a very simple template that you can use for for B2B or B2C. So this particular one from HubSpot, I think, is really nice and simple. Talks about the awareness stage, the consideration stage, and the decision stage. These are the major stages that all buyers go through, whether it be B2B and B2C. And so you need to be thinking about this. Now, why do you need to map the buyer's journey? It helps you understand what type of interactions you need to have with folks based on where they are. It helps you organize your content. It helps you organize your sales pitch. It helps you organize what you can put together and push out into the marketplace. So I really like the way they've laid this out, because you get to really ask yourself, if someone is in the beginning of learning about the category of my product. So let's say men's CrossFit shorts. I don't know why I came up with that example, but we're just going to go with it, right? It's not branded. It's just that as a guy, I was like, oh, there are men's CrossFit shorts that apparently are amazing because they're different than regular shorts. So I've become aware. I don't want to hear about your brand yet. I want somebody to educate me on why I should get these shorts. Oh, they have, they're better for you because they're odor resistant. I don't know, I'm just making this up, right? But you need content and interactions with folks that are specifically for that stage. Then in the consideration stage, right, we're talking more about like why my brand is better than the other brands. So that's why something like this is really important for you to use, so that you can understand all the phases, the mentality that the customers is going through, so that you can then say like, okay, great, we have an ebook for this, or we've developed some content around the consideration stage. It helps you keep organized. So very much like how we map out our social media, I encourage you to also map out the buyer's journey stages. Now, for my B2B folks in the call, this is my version of the buyer's journey, which I call the buying cycle. It's a little bit more complex because B2B purchases tend to be more complex and the sales cycle tends to be longer. So there's actually 6 stages instead of 3: problem naive, realization, exploration, confirmation, decision, and evaluation. Why I really, really like this grid, beyond the fact that I created it, is that it really focuses on shifting our mindset. That was a total joke, which is probably inappropriate, but we're just going to go with it anyway. Because it really forces us to think about what the buyer is thinking about, not what we want them to do. So historically, for B2B folks, sales folks, it's like, oh, I got to get them to do this, and I got to get them to read this. And I'm like, dude, they don't care about you. So what this helps us do is flip our mindset to think about the buyer. So it lists the buyer's objectives across all of the stages. And then we really start to think about what is the key interaction goal, or what is the main thing that we want to achieve in our interactions with them during this phase. And then I call them interactions because I stereotypically am dealing with sales and marketing, but you could say sales or marketing, the interactions that fall within that. So it could be a marketing piece, it could be a sales call, it could be an email, whatever that it is, but listing out some of those so that this serves as kind of a roadmap for you when you get into a situation like, okay, I'm talking to this person and they're in the confirmation stage. What do I have that I can share with them? Instead of just kind of all over the place, like you have all these files and all these resources, this tells you exactly, hey, Jeff, after we get off the call, I have a calculator that will show you exactly how much money that you're going to save by working with our company. You get that email within the next 5 minutes. I encourage you to take a look at it, and I'm going to follow up with you in 3 days to see what you think. Boom. I can say that because I know what resources I have for that stage, instead of I'm going to go back and find out what I can get to maybe add value to our conversation as a follow-up. I'll get back to you, but I have no idea what I'm going to share with you. So just look out for email from this random person that you may or may not want to buy from. And then you're digging to figure out, like, what am I going to share with them, right? So this is why this is so important. And then last but not least, sales cadence. I probably packed too much in this deck, but it's okay. We're going to get through it. So the sales cadence is also important because I want you to understand, this goes back to what I said before, right? Selling is a process. Selling is a discipline. Selling is not just talking to people. That is not selling. Especially as a startup, and if any of you are founders in the call, your job really is to build a foundation and a process that over time you will change and manipulate, that ultimately will get you to scale. That is your main job. If you're doing one-offs and you have no idea what you're doing, when it starts working, we don't know why it works. And so this was what happens with a lot of startup founders, especially ones that are good at sales. When they hire, and I've seen this so many times, when they hire that first salesperson or first sales PP, they say, hey, go sell, I did it. And then they ask, well, how'd you do it? Oh, I don't know. And so then we're starting from square one, right? So as a founder, as a seller, whatever your role is in the early stages, document what you're doing, even if it changes, and it will, trust me. I have had sales cadences where I was like, oh, you look back 6 months, you're like, that was stupid. But you know what? I learned, you know what? Do the voicemail before the email or do the link, whatever that looks like. Document it and then adjust. So what is a sales cadence? It's on the page. I don't have to read it for you, but basically I look at it as like a sales cookbook, which is why I put the picture of a cookbook on the left. It allows you to know the formula that you need to do in order to get to a closed sales. Beyond giving you structure and helping you know where you are, it reduces stress, because when you come into the office on Wednesday, I was like, okay, great. I sent them an email. I've interacted with them on LinkedIn. Okay, now I do this. You don't have to think. Everything's there. It also helps you to understand what is not working. If you have a closed sale and you have one that's not working, you're like, oh, okay, you know what? I might need to tweak this. So document, document, document. So this is what the development of a sales cadence looks like. So what does it look like in real life? I don't know why that reformatted, but whatever, we'll fix it. Here are two examples. One from my friends over at G2, which I love, great service, and then another one from Callbox. And this is really elaborate, right? Like you don't have to like do all this. That's not the point. But it shows you that they're very thoughtful about day one, I send the email and do this. Day two, I do this. Like, and you're thoughtful about how you're doing it. And the great thing about digital first selling is you want to marry your interactions. So I can potentially find somebody that we're interested in, connect with them on LinkedIn and say, hey, I love the stuff you're talking about. I'm also interested in XYZ. I want to connect with you on LinkedIn. And then maybe the next day you say like, hey, I want to share this information. You start a relationship. And then maybe with that information you share, you leave a voicemail and say, hey, I shared something with you on LinkedIn. If you find the information compelling, feel free we can jump on the phone for a 15-minute call. I can talk more about how, we look at that and see if it's a fit, whatever that looks like. But this is what I'm talking about a sales cadence. And I talk to a lot of startups. They do not have this. They're like, oh, we don't know. We'll just figure it out. I'm telling you, as you start to figure things out, and again, these are not set in stone. They will shift and change over time. But having a process set relieves stress, gives you some idea what's working, what's not working, and also allows you to replicate that once you start bringing on sales reps. Because the number one thing as a sales VP for a startup is you've got to identify processes before you hire salespeople. Absolute must. If you're going to scale, you've got to have a sales process and it's got to work. So this is the time to figure out what works and what doesn't work for your particular business. Another thing that's really important, I won't read all of these. That slide's wrong. I'm going to keep going. What I was going to say, there was supposed to be video selling tips. I don't know why they got messed up, but video selling is also really, really important as well. So make sure you're skilling up yourself on how to sell on Zoom, which is not necessarily the same thing as having a conversation. First and foremost, make sure you unmute yourself, right? But there's a couple of books out there that have come out recently on virtual selling. Actually, one I just picked up, which I was not going to show at first, but now I'm not plugging this one. I just got it because I know the author, called Virtual Selling. This may be an interesting read. This is not a plug, not a recommendation, but I think it's for large organizations. So don't buy it if it's not a fit for you, but I'm interested in reading it because I know the author. But yeah, just educate yourself on how to do virtual selling and how do you do video selling, because it's more important than ever before. So basic digital toolkit. And then I think we are done and we're questions. I got some time for you, which is great. These are kind of what I consider the basics of digital first selling. This is what you absolutely have to have in your toolkit. So you need some type of list, lead list or builder, I should say. I have used LinkedIn Sales Navigator for a very, very long time. I am interacting with B2B businesses. So LinkedIn works for me. If you're B2C, this may not be a fit for you, but feel free to do some research. Meeting scheduler. People, let me just get real with you. Let me get close and get real with you. Life changer. I was doing emails back and forth like, what day works for you? I'm available on Thursday. And then 3 days later, right, I got a meeting. Ridiculous, stupid, don't do it. Learn from my mistake. Calendly is not the only one, but I think it's one of the ones that are less expensive. And as a startup, it absolutely does the job. It is one link. You say like, oh, you're great. You're interested in talking with me? Great. Here's my calendar. It has everything, all the times I'm available. Boom, you got a meeting on calendar. Good. Zoom, I mean, I'm not explaining that one. Buffer is a Buffer and Hootsuite are probably the two I recommend for social media. If you're running multiple channels, this is what I use to plan out all of my social media. It will relieve you in your day to do the work. I'm telling you, game changer. When I started using Buffer, it allowed me to be so much less stressed because I knew things were going out without me having to worry about it. And you of course can, interact on social without it, but it gives you a baseline of what you need to do. You need to have a CRM. HubSpot is a good free one. I don't care what stage of startup you're in. I would say you get to use Excel for about the first couple of months, and then you got to get off Excel. It's not a CRM. And by virtue that HubSpot is free, it allows you to be really organized with your interactions with prospects. It allows you to know when to follow up with them. It lets you know what you said in your last interaction. So get a CRM. And as a startup, no offense to my Salesforce people, you don't need Salesforce yet. HubSpot is good enough. And then last but not least, signing of documents proposal. HelloSign is another one that's great. It makes signing documents super easy, low cost. So if you have a contract and you just send it folks, you can do it via email. So you can send it to multiple people and they sign. So hopefully that was not too fast. Hopefully I got through the content, and I want to open it up now for questions. Hopefully that was valuable, and hopefully we can get a little Q&A in here.
Thank you, Jeff. This was great. You are getting lots of thanks, and I saw a couple of great presentations. People are really enjoying this in the chat.
Awesome.
I have a couple questions that were sent to me directly. Kade is wondering, I have a strong following of followers on social media, but they're not buying, even though they're being pushed to the website to buy. So what would you say to an entrepreneur who has, a lot of social media followers, but those followers aren't converting into buyers?
Yeah, so followers aren't necessarily buyers, right? So you need to start thinking about how you can provide value in a different way to get them to connect with your product, because basically that conversion to your website is not leading to money. So there's a disconnect there. So I also find too, if you have a strong following, that's not always the same thing as a community. A community is something that people really rely on you for specific interactions, information, that sort of thing. So one thing I might suggest that you do is see if you can host a live Q&A or some type of interaction off of social media and see how many people follow you to that interaction. I mean, it could be like a live Q&A where you have a guest that talks about your product. That will give you an indication if you actually have a community or you just have followers. Because what it sounds like, you just have followers because they're not converting to actual dollars. And in that Q&A, don't sell the product. Go back to what we talked about before, is talk about the problem. If you're selling, I don't know what you're selling, but you're selling candles. I don't know if this B2C stuff is today. But talk about, the importance of having a great energy in your house and all the things you can do to create, a great ambiance. So, for instance, I would say with COVID, we're at home all the time. And if you have a drab environment, it's, it lowers your productivity. So we're going to talk today about all the things you can do to make your home more productive and make yourself more productive. And oh, by the way, one of those is buying candles. There you go.
That's a great idea. I love that advice. Another question: in many companies, content and digital presence is created by the marketing team. What is your thought on startups that have a sales team, but they don't have someone doing marketing just yet?
Yeah, so there's a couple different things. So salespeople are not content creators. I don't believe that they should be. You can attack that in a couple different ways. You can go to, you can hire contract marketing support. So you can go through things like Fiverr or Upwork to create content to help salespeople. You can also hire a contract marketer, depending on how much money the startup has. On the higher end, you can have a contract CMO that will build a strategy and do all that sort of work. On the lower end, you can just basically hire a content creator that will, create content that the sales team can share. But that you in the beginning, it helps if you have leadership that understand marketing, but at some point you're probably going to have to get some outside support to help you create those things, because I don't believe in having salespeople focus on that, because your job is to sell. So hopefully that was helpful. But Upwork, just like the Up and Work Together is a great one, and then also Fiverr. You can get some relatively cheap folks to do really great work. I should say cheap, I would say.
About your calendar template, how you made it. Was it Canva?
That particular one, I believe, is also HubSpot. The one I use is actually in Excel. I'm an Excel like numbers nerd geek. So mine is actually in Excel. And what I do is I usually list out my themes 3 to 6 months about what I'm going to talk about. And then within those themes for each month, I break down to 4 subtopics. So it's stereotypically how I run, but that's all. So that whole month is in a spreadsheet. And so basically what I say is, I say what I'm going to talk about in the cell, and then I'll either like link to the resources. I'll tell myself this is what we post, and then from that, I then load all that up into Buffer. I use Buffer, and what that does, I do it on a monthly basis, and so all of that pushes out, and I don't even touch it. I'm telling you my secrets. I'm telling anybody out in the streets. Everybody thinks that I'm like pushing that every day. It's not true. Most people aren't anyway, so it's not.
So Excel for content calendars, not for your CRM database.
Correct.
Question of how does this process of digital selling change when it's higher ticket items like real estate or investments?
So it changes in that so like read the question out again to make sure I understand it. I'm sorry.
How does the digital selling process change for high ticket items such as real estate or investments?
Okay, so you need a sales funnel. So the essence of it is the same. Like the buyer's journey, they go through the same thing. The awareness, consideration, all that is the same, but it's a lot more education. It's a lot more content, and so it's a little bit more high touch. But ultimately, it's the same process. So, for instance, we did a workshop with real estate agents and helping them understand how to create a brand, how to create content, how to educate people, not about the properties they were selling, but the process of home buying, and showing that like, you don't have to do this alone. I'm an expert at this. Let me show you how to do that, so that you would have more motivation to want to reach out to that person because you learned about them. So it's the exact same process. But really what you want to think about, that buyer's journey is your sales funnel. And you want to be really thoughtful about how you get people through that to ultimately want to pick up the phone and call you. But the exact same process.
Great. And I think this will be our last question. I just got another one. With startup digital selling, do you essentially exchange personal privacy in order to sell your products? Can you have it at all? So I'm wondering maybe you want to try to take a stab at that. How does privacy interact when you're trying to find out information about your potential customers, but working within, privacy regulations?
So
I'm sorry. May I clarify, Katie?
Sure, go ahead.
No, sorry, and thank you so much. And I apologize for unmuting. Jeff, you were just awesome.
Thank you.
My question is, how can you maintain your own personal privacy if you're a startup and you're trying to get your business out there, but you just don't want to be totally exposed?
Okay, now I understand the question. So I think I understand the question behind your question. So I tend to be a pretty private person myself, right? Even though like I'm an international speaker and all this stuff, which just doesn't really make sense. So I think first and foremost, you have to do what is comfortable for you. Because when you do interact with people, people can tell if you're not being authentic, right? More so than ever before. So I will say that if you are the face of the brand, you're gonna have to find a way that you can interact with your target market in a way that is comfortable for you. And so if that is, a planned webinar, if that is, social, but whatever that looks like, you got to do what's comfortable for you. I will say that being the face of the brand, if that's having a human representation of the brand, does make selling easier. Now, does that necessarily have to be you? No, it depends. It depends on your business. I don't know what your business is, but I will say when a founder has a compelling story that they share. And I'm not saying you have to share it on like ABC5 and like wherever you feel comfortable. It is a very compelling reason for people to want to invest their money in your product. It moves people because it connects with them on a really emotional basis. And so I say, and I think, again, I think I hear the question behind the question. I'm not really comfortable like giving up my privacy and kind of being out in the streets. But you also have to be thoughtful about like, if you're not willing to do that, why am I willing to give you my money? So you just gotta think about that. Like, and from coming from somebody that's super private, so I get it. I had to also question myself. Well, if you're not passionate enough and believe enough in what you're saying to put yourself out there, why should I invest my time, energy, and money in you? So don't do things that don't make you feel comfortable, but also have that internal conversation of why am I not putting myself out there more? If I'm really love this and really passionate about this, you are the best storyteller. And I've coached CEOs on this too. I have startup CEOs that want, because I'm usually the chief marketing officer, that want me to do it. And I'm like, nope, dude, gotta come from you. So hopefully that was helpful. Any other questions?
Rashida, thank you. I think we're a little bit past our time, but just people wanting to know the book you shared. Who is the author that wrote it?
I thought you meant my book. We'll get to that in a second. This is Virtual Selling. This is by Mike Schultz, Dave Shabby, and Andrew Springer. So Mike Schultz is the primary author, and I can put that in the notes when I send them over to you. Again, I just got this one. It's probably for large organizations, but take a look at it. If you feel it's a fit, great. I know there's another virtual sales book out by Jeb Blount. So J-E-B as in boy, B-L-O-U-N-T. That may be a little bit better for earlier stage startups, that sort of thing. But check them out. Again, newer books that I haven't read completely. So it's not a plug. This one is a plug. This is not specifically written for, there's a glare there, startups, but especially if you're dealing with, there was a sales marketing question there, this would be a book that's relevant for you. I really wrote this book for B2B organizations that are struggling to align sales and marketing and really have them come to market together. So if that is something that is interest of you, I encourage you to pick up the book as well as the audiobook. And the website is createtogethernessbook.com, createtogethernessbook.com. And all of my content, and I encourage you to follow me. My website is meetjeffdavis.com. And then I'm mostly active on LinkedIn and Instagram, and those are all my handle. My handle is Meet Jeff Davis. So always open to answer questions if you reach out to me as I can with my crazy schedule. But always love helping entrepreneurs and startup founders.
Thank you so much, Jeff. This was a great presentation. And it also made me realize that I literally never go anywhere now without Googling it first, which I didn't realize that I did, but apparently that's the way the world works now.
Everything starts on Google.
This is great. Thanks so much, Jeff, for your time and your expertise. You're getting lots of thank yous in the chat. I will send out the recording of this session and also a calendar link so you can sign up for future Polsky events. Jeff, is there anything you'd like to leave the people with before we sign off for the evening?
First of all, again, thank you guys for the engagement. I can see some of the hand gestures and that sort of thing. Thank you for the questions. You know, the selling process for startups is not easy. I don't pretend that it is, but hopefully what I was able to share with you is creating some discipline and structure. Trust me, it will relieve stress. It will relieve your anxiety and all the crazy. So take the time to do the work up front to create a strong foundation for yourself, and it'll help you scale faster.
Thanks.
That's all I got.
Have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.